If you would have told me in 2018 that Logic would have a comeback, I would have told you you're out of your mind. Like, there's absolutely no way I thought Logic was going to have the comeback that he had in 2020, and he delivered with no pressure. The second installment to the Pressure series, he dropped Under Pressure back in 2014, and this was just like, wow. I listened to it, and I almost had tears of joy because I was a Logic fan, especially like in his
The early years of his career.
and the Young Sinatra series and the installments, and then after that, Under Pressure, The Incredible True Story, all prominent albums in my listening. And then he started to, steer off, and I wasn't a fan of that. But when he came back with No Pressure, guys, I was absolutely ecstatic.
Yeah, and I think that the marketing of the album had a big role to play in that because, the fact that, he shows that cover of No Pressure where it's kind of, an homage to the original Under Pressure cover. It was genius. And the fact that he told his fans that this would be his retirement album really got people wondering, like, wow, this guy has really given us a decade of music and it's finally his time to bow out. And I think that's the biggest narrative for this album is that he was smart enough to know, like, okay, you know what? I've done my part. I've given a complete catalog of mixtapes and albums. And, now it's time for a new chapter in my life where I want to be a good father to my son. And I've given all that I can to this genre. So Mariano, I want to know what your thoughts are on this amazing album.
I think this album is great. It's probably my second favorite Logic album. Yeah, it lands high in his discography for me. And honestly, this album, it has so many great songs. Like there's nothing to hate about this album. I can see why people. So I've seen some people on Twitter say this album kind of feels repetitive in terms of Logic's rapping, but I have to disagree. I have to say that this album, like me not being the biggest Logic fan out there, I'm saying that this album is great. It's honestly a great listen. No ID did his thing, and most of the instrumentals on this album, great listen overall. I think Soul Food 2, it's probably one of my favorite songs of the year, and That Bot as well is really good. Man I Is really good. Yeah, there's a before as well. Yeah,
GP4 is fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, and
it's a great album.
I think what's crazy too is that Logic wrote this album in just 1 week, and it was recorded in just 4 studio sessions.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Which is mind-blowing, and it just shows, Logic's crazy skills to just lock into the studio, work with no ID, work with 6, and just put out, a phenomenal album.
He's a professional, man. This guy's been dropping studio albums since the beginning of, since his first studio album was Under Pressure. I think that's what we consider.
That was his debut album, yeah.
Yeah, like
but
since
he's been dropping a lot of mixtapes before then.
Yeah, I don't know, the Young Sinatra series and everything.
For me,
yeah.
For me, marketing this album as like your final album, I think you hold such a high amount of responsibility. Like, okay, I'm gonna give the fans and people that have been supporting me for years like a great send off to my career. If I think this is gonna be his last album, I don't think so. I think I've seen him drop couple like songs off of his Twitch highlights. He's been doing a lot of remixes for popular beats that have like impacted the world along the years. I've seen him remix some of the Nothing Was the Same beats and stuff, and I think he's gonna drop those on, I don't know, streaming services in a couple of months or maybe a year. But as a full commercial album, I think this might be actually his last, because like you don't put up an album like this and don't encourage yourself to make it good. And like, nah, you're not gonna go from No Pressure to make a Confessions of a Dangerous Mind Part 2. Like, I think he's gonna, I think this is a great setup for Logic. Obviously,
it was a great bow out, and obviously if he does release another studio album, I think that completely ruins the integrity of this whole thing, because No Pressure was the perfect bow out, and it was the perfect comeback. He couldn't have done this any better, and you got so much different content material, everything from what it's like to be a dad, from when he started making his mixtapes and how he felt on the come up and how he felt going through his life. And that's what I like about it, is it's an open diary of Logic's life, and looking at it from the perspective now, because now he's not under pressure. He has a family. He has a lengthy catalog of music. He has celebrated projects. But back in 2014, man, this guy was under pressure, bro. He didn't have, let's say the incredible true story to him. He didn't have the Grammy acclaim with everybody. He didn't have no pressure. Like he didn't have anything.
That's why it's beautiful to see everything kind of come full circle for Logic. Yeah. And, a lot of rappers have said that they're going to retire and then they just don't do it. So I hope that he stays true to his word, because he pulled off the impossible here. He actually dropped an amazing final album, and it's one of his best.